when you just get started, it is hard to price your cakes.
I understand that pricing is difficult because when you start, you're not in the position to say no to everything or to some stuff. And I say, don't say no. You need the experiences and you need the job and you need all that. But even when you start it, you have to sit down and say, I'm going to be paid myself this much. That is your salary. Your salary is not selling the cake and having £30 on top of the cake. You're working for a company that is yours, but you should have a salary in that. You should cover that. And maybe start with something low, because if you're starting, and then start building up as you go along.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Modern Cake Society. I'm so excited because today we are inviting none other than Enrique, owner of Have Some Cake. So is it Have Some Cake or Have Some Cake UK? How do you say it?
No, it's Have Some Cake. Yeah.
Some Cake.
Have Some Cake UK is for Facebook, for Instagram.
And Instagram, yes. Because obviously I've always known you as Have Some Cake UK, so I was like, do I say it? Do I not say it?
No, it's only because after I chose the name, I found out there was a Have Some Cake in South Africa back then. So I made the difference that, this is UK, not South Africa.
Okay, well, at least now we know the full story. So tell us a little bit about how, because obviously I know that most of my members know you. I've been following you for quite some time now, but I'm always curious to see how someone's cake journey actually starts, because now you are renowned internationally, you do classes everywhere in the world. I've even seen that you've done wedding cakes abroad, you're big potatoes, aren't you? How did that start? Because you mentioned being an architect in your past life.
Yes, I studied architecture. My background is in architecture, and I work in architecture for quite some time. And then I think it was in 2009 when there was this worldwide financial crash everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot of people, including myself, lost my job in architecture. And there was this thing that architecture is a beautiful career, profession, but it's a creative outlet.
Mm-hmm.
But when you work in an office, the outlet is not quite there. There's a lot of technical stuff that you have to deal. So, and I also come from a family that is, a lot of there's chocolatiers, chef pâtissiers, all this stuff. So I've always been connected to that and interested in that. And then when I had the time, when I was made redundant, I started to bake a little bit more, and it took some time. It took some time between that and taking people's work, because they were saying, you should do this as a business, because I kept looking for a job in architecture. I suppose in the back of my mind, I was also quite disappointed with the lack of creativity in the profession, and I was like, do I want to I knew I had to find a job anyway to do something.
Yes.
And that's one led to the other one, and I decided, well, okay, let's do this as a proper business, actually, and that's
how long did that take you? Because we speak a lot about how like a lot of people, like I know probably people who follow you as well, and cake designers that you give classes to. There's something that I see and hear a lot is, I want to do that full time, but I'm too scared because it doesn't really pay the bills. So how long did that take you to go from, right, I'm doing that as a hobby, to, right, I'm being serious about it now, and this is going to be...
It did take, I'd say that officially Have Some Cake is 2013, and I was made redundant, I think, in 2009. So it took quite some time, and I had jobs in between and did all this stuff in between. It was a moment, like the moment you said, and at the beginning, it's hard. It's hard because obviously there's that thing, if you have a family or if you have to pay bills, that's the main worry for everyone, like we pay for it. Because for a lot of people, what we do is just cake.
Yes.
And I have to say something, because when I was younger, and I was deciding what to do, my father was a doctor, and he actually taught, when I say I'm going to study architecture, and he actually he supported me. I mean, he wasn't against it, but he said you have to be very good, because actually everyone can be an architect, because everyone can say where the wall goes up to. Like we are told anyone can bake a cake, debatable, but
Yeah. Well, they can make a cake, but they can't make
yeah,
a cake.
yeah, exactly. It's all debatable, but what he meant is, that everyone is going to say, like, I'm an architect as well, because I say the wall is 190 and that's it.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
So there's that thing that we're exposed to, but I think I was always interested in, and it's a creative outlet. It's a massive creative outlet for me. And I think probably that's why I enjoy underbaking.
Yeah, it's funny because our last guests were Sweet Lion Heart in South Africa.
Yeah.
And I was telling them, oh, when I see your stuff, like I know that it's you, I don't need to see the name. And it's exactly the same for you, Enrique. When your stuff pops up on my feed like that, I don't need to see Have Some Cake UK. I know it's you, and I think it's the same for everyone. You've developed such like a signature style, and not only in the cakes that you made, but in the way you present them as well. So you have like a style in your photos, in your reels. Like you do have your own flair on doing things. And would you say that that's something that I'm assuming you've just done it because that's what you do, but was there some kind of like strategy behind it, or was it just because you enjoy doing it like that and it became your thing basically?
No, I think I wouldn't call it a strategy. Like, I set up to do that, because obviously when I started, I also started when Instagram was quite, it was pictures, it was photos on it. It was fantastic, because it was literally an album of photos. And
I missed that time.
And not like now, yeah. I mean, now it's whatever, it's TikTok reloaded or whatever. But
Agreed.
back then, it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing if you were into pictures, because it was very artistic. You will come on Instagram for inspiration, for real inspiration. And my dad was a keen. He wasn't a photographer, but he loved, for some reason, he wasn't I wouldn't say he was a good photographer, but he was fascinated by cameras. So he had a cabinet full of cameras. And me and my older sister, we used to have a go at the camera and photograph and all this stuff. He loved photography, but he didn't have the eye to do it. And we grew up with that. And when Instagram was all about photos, I think I did want to have beautiful photos. That's probably, that's what's up. It's maybe not a strategy, but it's born from that desire to have a really beautiful, it was a portfolio, basically. And I wanted to treat it like that. And that's probably why it evolved into a more, having the pictures taken in the same place and the same background and the same light, because I don't like to use artificial light. I make the effort to take the picture when there's light outside.
Yes, yeah.
That kind of thing. So, and some people, well, that's another thing, but some people uses backgrounds and stuff, which I think flattens the whole picture. I like these shadows and, all the darkness on one side, but not too dark, because at the end of the day, we're selling a product, and I think we should show the product,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and that's definitely something that I try to teach my members is you need to be able to showcase your products, because if you don't, then first of all, no one is going to do it for you. And if your products are not attractive, then at the end of the day, you're probably not going to sell them, because before people get to taste your cake, it's the visual that's going to make the sale. So having a visual identity is quite important, and however you get there, you kind of need to get there, basically.
Yeah.
That's my belief anyway, and I think that
I agree. And that's actually a question that pops up all the time about having your own identity or your own style, and I don't think there's a magical formula. There's no, you can't. I always say you can't tell people what to do, because it just naturally kind of evolve into, if you really are after that, I mean, I think the people that gets there, it's by trial and error, seeing what works and, developing that side. But some people think that it's just like, oh, tell me how to do it and that's it.
Yeah, no, I
If it
agree.
was that easy.
Yeah, no, for sure. But for example, I see, like you say, you evolve into it, but you still have to somehow put the work, to put the effort into that evolution. Because, for example, I see when I first started, I was like very dark and moody photos. So I was always trying to take photos in like a certain environment. And then as I evolved, I liked another style better. And then I moved house, and then all of a sudden I had this very light kitchen with white tiles at the back, and it looked quite modern. And my photos completely changed from that point onwards. And
Yeah,
then people knew me as that style, which just happened to me because it happened that it was the kitchen that I was in that I created myself. But still,
that was the
and
one
and
here in
before
UK.
that, I was like more romantic and like using like flannels and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, it was just like super sleek down the background,
Yeah.
and that made me, quote
Click,
unquote.
it
But
click. At
yeah,
the it click at the end. You just realize, well, maybe
yeah, exactly.
I don't need all these props or anything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it is something I tell people actually. I said, we all probably try the, like you say, the moody
Mm.
dark photos, but I think that works very well in editorial, like in a fashion magazine,
Yes, for sure.
um, and portrait. But it's like you said, you need to impress people for people to come to you. And unfortunately, it's not the same as a portrait or, a fashion show or whatever. It's just something
Yeah.
that you have to show how it looks. And I think, yeah, you have close up, but making your picture dark is just, I always found it like, well, it will look fine if I do like a editorial in a magazine, but it's not selling me anything. It's just selling me the image
Yes.
as something fashionable, as something, but it's not selling me the product
Mm.
because I can't see the product. you know?
It looks nice,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure because I can't
yeah,
really see anything.
yeah. But yeah, I suppose it's a learning curve for everyone.
No, for sure. And speaking of learning curves, how did you go from like not selling cakes to selling cakes? Like, did you always know? Because let's face it, you are on the higher end of the cake bucket, which is great. And I'm assuming it didn't always look like that. Did you from the beginning thought to yourself, because I know that's something that I did when I started my cake business. I
Mm.
already had a patisserie training. I had already been working for the people in commercial kitchens. So I was like, right, I'm going to do my own wedding cakes. I want them to be high end. I want them to cost a lot of money. And this is the path that I want to take. Was that something a bit similar to you, or did you,
I
like try things out and
no, I did want it to be beautiful objects, like, that people talk about. And obviously, in relation to cost, I think that's something that we all go through and we all have to learn with time. I did know that I didn't want to work. I do some celebration cakes, but I didn't want to do celebration cakes. I didn't want to do children's cakes because that's a very low paying market.
with high
So
expectations?
yeah, I wanted the wedding industry. I
Mm.
wanted wedding cakes or big, huge celebrations because,
Yeah.
it has more scope for not only price, but which is very important, but
Yes.
also in terms of what you can do and propose and achieve for when you make it. So in a way, yeah, I did think, yeah, I want them to look beautiful and as perfect as possible rather than concentrate on other things that I knew they weren't going to pay for anything,
Yeah.
pretty much.
So I'm assuming that also having a background in architecture, because you said something off camera earlier before we started recording. You said, and that is something that made me laugh inside because I always say that the cake industry is the only industry where we don't get paid. Like we almost apologize for charging
Yeah,
for like cake tasters and like
yeah.
should I charge, should I not? She's like, yes you should. And obviously you've come from like a background of like an industry where people get paid for consultations, usually not cheap as well. So did that influence you in the how you market yourself and how you price things up for your own business? Like, did that help you with getting rid of the guilt of asking for money for your craft? Does my question make sense? I'm not sure it does.
Yeah. Do you know what? I remember a potential client once. She inquired about a cake, but she wanted to taste them. And I said, yeah, I can do it for you, but you have to pay for the tasters. And I always remember that person because she actually, she had the, you know, the chick to reply. You know, most people say, well, whatever, I won't reply. But she did. And she was actually gobsmacked that I was asking money for her to taste my cake. And I always remember that, like a point, like where you say, how, at that moment, I say, how all these people behind me survive by making samples, which you know is not easy. I mean, making samples is a whole, it's like nearly making a cake because it's all the cutting and packaging and all this stuff.
Yeah. It's even, for me, it's almost even worse.
Oh,
Like,
it's
especially when
not
you
for
box
me.
them up, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, for me, it's the same. It's about this. It's just like, I don't want to do that because what's the point? I mean, it's so much work, cutting and packaging and all this stuff. But it was the chick that she actually said, how are you going to survive if you don't let people to taste your cakes when I can get them for free anywhere else? And I'm like,
where can you get them for free? Go to Marks and Spencer's and ask for free cake and see what they tell you.
but it is what we were saying. I mean, people in the past, they thought if they want to come with me, I have to do this, and they wouldn't charge.
Yeah.
Even
And I'm guilty as well of not charging at the beginning for cake tasters. So I started by not charging for consultations because it was before COVID. And we still had people coming to your house. And one day I had people coming over to my house and I didn't charge for them, and because for me it was part of the package and I felt like I shouldn't charge. Also, I was working with a cake designer before that who trained me into like the basics of cake design, and she didn't charge. So I thought that's what we do. So I didn't really question it. And I had this couple coming and they sat in my house, in my own house as well. It's like, feels like very, you know, intimate.
Yeah.
And they tasted my cake and they drank my tea and all of that. And they stayed for like an hour, and I made a quote for them and all that. And then they left. And then when I gave them the quote, they said, no, it's out of our price range. We're going to go for another cake designer that we also had a consultation with. And I was like, I felt absolutely betrayed. And from that point on, I thought to myself, now I'm charging. Even if I deduce it, which is what I started doing, from the final quote, and in fact, I actually added to the final quote, but people feel like they didn't pay for it, then I am not doing that for free ever again. And then I stopped doing that as well, and I say, right now, I am charging. Because I'll always remember having that customer, it was a couple, and they came for a consultation as well, and the guy said, it's funny that you don't charge for this because this is amazing. He was like, you should see how much they charge us for tasting with the caterer. And I was like, why?
I know, because that is, you know, I have a friend and she works in, she's like a business manager in a company, and she once gave me very good advice because she said, Enrique, offer a discount, and this is for everyone, and everyone does that. I mean, I'm not telling you anything morally wrong or anything, because even when we go for sale in some place, they're earning money on whatever. We pay 50% maybe, but they're earning 50% too, you know, even though we buy the product discounted by 50%. And she was like, you know, offer them 20% or whatever, and your final price will include that 20%. And she explained it to me because she said to me, you've been in conversation with this person for like, what, maybe back and forth, emails and all this stuff. That's time. And it's true. It is time. But we get into the emailing part and we think this is chasing the job. And we automatically think it should be free. But sometimes an email takes you like, 20 minutes, or thinking what you're going to put. And like you say, the consultation and all this stuff. And we think, well, that's part of the job. but what if the job doesn't land? And we have a lot of that. We have quite a lot of jobs that we answer and never more than one email, is like that. But I had what you had too. I had one bride coming to me and then she did actually say that my samples were more expensive than what she was paying somewhere else. And I went like, she took them away anyway. And she went with the other one because the other one was cheaper. And I said, fine. And I have no problem with that. But it's just the time that you take to do all this. And I don't do consultations anymore, full consultations. And I made that point very clear from, since COVID actually, because obviously we couldn't just have people in the house. And I was like, well, if you want to call me and we talk for 20 minutes, it's free, but I'm not gonna do a sketch. It's only to help you understand how this works, basically. Yeah. You want all this, you have to pay, because otherwise you spend too much time doing and
So what does that look like for you then? Like, do people get in touch with you and then you just give them a quote, they agree, they put down a deposit, or like what does that look like for you?
They do ask. I mean, there's a inquiry form on my website, but sometimes they just email and ask, having this number of people. They don't talk about budget because I think for whatever reason, I have no idea why, people is scared of talk about budgets. I mean, like, I found that absolutely ridiculous in this. And even when you ask them, sometimes they're quite, like...
Yeah, I think they don't know. They don't know, do they?
No.
Maybe he's going to throw a number and we're going to react and say, oh, yes or no.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be like...
I felt that quite a lot.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be like that. And I always tell them, in the first email, I say, it would be nice if you actually let me know what your budget is. Not because I'm going to say no, because I always tell them, listen, maybe your budget is £500, but what you need, and I say, you can have your cake for £400, but it's not going to be a cake for 200 people with 300 flowers. So it's up to you that after that, it's up to you to decide whatever you want to do. But it's good to know what you're working with, because obviously, like you said, I mean, you asked me for 200 people and I say, well, it's going to be £5,000, and obviously it's going to,
Yeah, I remember this bride asking me, that was a long time ago, that was before COVID and everything, but still, she asked me for a cake for 200 people and she had a budget of £400.
Nah.
In what world?
And I'm
she
sure.
did tell me that her sister had a cake for that price for that amount of people the year before. And I was like, well, that's good for her. Just go see the same cake maker.
The same, exactly. I mean, when people said that, I always said, so why are you actually bothering people if you know where to go and get the same? I mean, pricing is obviously a very complicated stuff, because it's not only affected by your skills or what you put on the table, but also where you live and, your region and all this stuff affects the price. But also, I've realized that, when you go on TikTok and you see all these people on these TikToks saying the cakes I made this week and how much I charge for them. And then they show you this Lambeth style cake in buttercream for £50. And I say, how many cakes of that you have to make to actually break even? Because there's this mentality that, she might go to Aldi or Lidl or whatever and buy the cheapest one, which is fine. I have no problem with that. I don't believe that, flour is the same everywhere. I mean, it has to be really bad to be bad. Mm-hmm. But there's this thing that they think that they spend £10 in ingredients, plus get £10 more on materials, I mean, the cake board or whatever. And then they add like 20% on top of it or 30%, and that's profit. And I'm like,
no.
And they sell it for £50, and I'm like, you're better off going and working for someone else.
Yeah.
And get paid minimum wage, and that's it.
So
but
what
you're
would
not
you
making
do to
money.
Someone, because I think there is also that is something that a lot of cake makers struggle with. And I'm going to say that a lot of cake makers are women, and that is something that women usually struggle with a lot, and that is, it's not going to come back to me. How do you call it again? When you feel like you're being fake, like you don't deserve, the imposter syndrome. And what would you say to, for example, people who are watching us right now, are Modern Cake Society members. Lots of them are, doing that part-time. A lot of them have started not that long ago. Like, obviously, when you just get started, it is hard to price your cakes. But equally, you don't want to price your cakes too low, because then you also undermine the competition, and then it's like a vicious circle of creating a market which is cheap and no one takes seriously, basically, which is my interpretation of the matter. What would you say to someone like that, to Jess, say, who's have been making cakes for 2 years and too scared of charging?
You made a point of not so much undermining the market, but the competition, but undermining the market, because there's this thing that you charge less, and people think that cake has no value, or a design cake has no value. I understand that pricing is difficult, and I tell that to everyone, and I say, well, because when you start, you're not in the position to say no to everything or to some stuff. And I say, don't say no. You need experience. You need the experiences, and you need the job, and you need all that. But even when you start it, you have to sit down and say, I'm going to be paid myself this much. And that's your salary. That is your salary. Your salary is not selling the cake and having £30 on top of the cake. You're working for a company that is yours, but you should have a salary in that. You should cover that, and maybe start with something low, because if you're starting, and then start building up as you go along. But don't just say, when I started, there was this thing that even in college, food college classes and stuff, they would say, oh well, it's the rule of three. And it was like 1/3 was for ingredients, 1/3 for all the materials that you use, like cake boards and all this stuff. And then your final price was 1/3 of, the last third of that. So if you, like I said before, you spend £10 in one, £10 in the other one. So you should only charge £10 more on the final product. And I was like, whoever invented this was setting everyone to fail, or to make 300 cakes. But I understand that when you start this, it's a difficult bit, because obviously you also have that chip in your mind that you're only making cake.
Yeah. Agreed.
And it's probably not worthy of a high price.
Yeah.
And when you see how many people do bespoke cakes, because they're all pretty much bespoke, actually. When someone comes to you, they're all pretty much bespoke. And then you should charge also for that, even if it's a copy of someone or someone else's or whatever. It has an input from you as well, so it changes. It's what I tell people. It changes the more it goes through, the more people. It's I'll say you work out, pay yourself your payment, and then that's you decide how much percentage you want on profit, because obviously you need to have a profit to run a business. I mean, and that shouldn't come from your salary. That shouldn't come from anything like that. And that's what is going to keep you going, because I don't know if it happened to you, but it happened to me at the beginning. Before I decided, I'm going to do this as a business, I was doing trials, like charging people and all this stuff, but I was often out of pocket. Like buying ingredients and by myself, and
100%.
not charging. So I was basically underselling what I was doing. So it is difficult, but people need to sit down and say, this is a proper business, and consider how long you've been in business, and obviously where you live, because obviously some parts you're going to have to charge less. Like if you live in Paris, I suppose you can charge 4 times.
Yes, same in
whatever.
London.
Exactly, in London, So that kind of, but it's important, and it's something that you have to work out through, with time.
Yeah, I love what you said about, if you're getting started, don't say no. Just take everything, take as much as you can, because it will build your experience. It will also build your confidence. And then it will also eventually, I guess, subconsciously build, like I just said, the confidence to stop undermining yourself
Yeah.
and be like, right, I've done enough of cakes that I don't really fancy doing. Now it's time. And also, it also helps build that library of, you know, what you like to do and you know what you don't like to do. Because oftentimes when you get started, you think you're going to like doing something and then you're like, actually, this is a pain in the neck. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like me with croquembouche, for example, because I was the only person making croquembouche in my area. A lot of people would come to me for croquembouche. I was like, I could run almost my business on croquembouche. I'm exaggerating, but. And then when I had my little one, it became so stressful because everything is last minute, you know, all the caramel and the
Yeah.
stuff and the filling the choux, and it's just like literally a race against the clock on the day of the delivery. And I was like, I have a toddler at home, I can't deal with that. So I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing croquembouche ever again until I have, you know, time and it's a bit less stressful. But you're not going to know what you don't want to do until you actually do it,
Do
aren't
it.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely correct. I mean, but also at the beginning we all need the money and the experience. So the more you get it, it's like you said, the more you know what works and what doesn't work. And the time comes when you can say, listen, I'm not into this. I don't want to do this. It's the same. It's the same, probably on the same universe, like recognizing a potentially toxic inquiry or client. That
Yes.
a lot of people end up with toxic clients, like really awful people. And I always say, well, how did you get there? And sure, there are a lot of red flags before you get to that point. And I think it's all together with pricing and, you know, how you approach and what kind of, but you get there to be able to say, no, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested in this.
Yeah.
But it does take time. It's like I said before, there's no magical, you know.
No, for sure. And speaking of toxic clients, because it does
Mm.
happen, and I know that this is something, it's one of the things that you know it happens, but when it does happen to you, you're like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm lousy at my job. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's not necessarily you. I mean, mistakes are made, and it happened to all of us. Do you have a way of dealing with difficult clients?
I've been lucky enough not to have really that client. I only had one once, and it was a funny one because it was a returning client, which is really weird because,
Okay,
you
yeah.
know, if it was the first time, I'll say yes. But it was a very young girl, and she ordered a cake from me before. She was super happy, super chuffed, and then she ordered me another one, and it was. I told her before that, I said, listen, this cake has a lot of flowers and stuff, so you're gonna have to, um, play down your expectations. It's not gonna be as flowery. It's not gonna be like this because otherwise you're gonna have to pay a lot more. And the flowers were a specific color. She came, she took the cake, and then she changed her mind. And yeah, and then she
Well,
said,
like on
oh,
the spot or afterwards?
afterwards, she took the cake. She took the cake away to her place, and then she came to message me, and she said, "Oh, I'm not happy with the cake." And I did say, "Well, why didn't you say when you go pick it up? Why take it away?" And anyway, she sent the boyfriend with the cake back. I gave her a full refund, and I said, "Listen, it's fine. Don't worry," because I didn't want to. I think the cake came back in the same
Yeah, they didn't touch
place.
it.
She didn't cut it. She didn't do anything to it. And I said, no, I don't. I think if you can, that's the way to deal with it. I mean, as long as it's returned in the same state, not cut or whatever. If you cut it, it's another thing. But I think that's the only one that I had. That I can say, well, that was potentially nearly like
Yeah.
a disaster in terms of what the client, how she was, but she was very apologetic and very nice throughout all the thing, and because I said I'm not going to fight with this as long as you return the cake to me, that's
Yeah.
fine.
I think it's good that you know like what you're willing to do, and I don't want people to start like sitting down and writing down all the possible horrible scenarios that could happen to them, but
No,
having a certain idea of, right, this is where I set my boundaries. If a client asks for a refund but they ate the cake, then I'm not giving a refund.
no, you can't.
If, you know, like having some sort of like situations. And also, I always recommend having like clear terms and conditions,
Yeah,
because then you put it out there first, and that way, even if you as the cake maker forget what your terms and conditions are, because I can't remember, I've wrote mine like ages ago. And if something happens and you go back on them, you're like, okay, yeah, I
yeah,
did write that. So then you can tell the people. But also knowing, like, is this worth me fighting over this?
yeah.
Or it's just easier for my mental state right now to just say, all right, I'll just refund you and be done with it. Because that happened to me as well. And it was the mother of the bride, and she was awful. She was so mean to me on the phone, and I was like almost crying, and she was like, we want a refund, we ate the cake, it was good, it's not the problem. The problem was I put vanilla buttercream instead of pistachio buttercream in one of the cakes, and she was awful about it. And she actually told me that it was because I had them sign the terms and conditions. And I said, the terms and conditions are there because I have to protect myself as a small business owner.
Yeah.
Regarding things like allergies and things like that. You can't blame me for having terms and conditions. I am a one-person business.
Yeah.
But she was like, so I just gave her a refund. But in hindsight, I would have dealt with the situation differently. But, you know, hindsight is amazing.
I think having terms and conditions is very important, actually. I know because obviously I didn't have them at the beginning, but then I realized, like you say, it's protecting yourself. And I know they sound a little bit scary because you know, a lot of people that make cakes is a little bit informal. I mean, I'm not saying, yeah, you get health and safety and all this stuff, but they run it a little bit informal. But I think, and once you put something like on writing on paper and send it to the other person, also the other person think, oh, this is quite formal. But I think it's very important to have one, however long, and, you know, to cover just the basics. Like, you know, if you eat the cake, you only get, and it was a mistake on my side, I'm only returning like 40% of the amount or whatever. Because otherwise you get, and you know, if they have that, I mean, they didn't read it and they want all the money back, they won't win because they got the terms and condition already, and they wouldn't be able to. Yeah. That wouldn't hold anywhere, basically.
No, for sure. Well, I don't know about you, but I speak a lot to my members about boundaries, and it goes with inquiry as well, and having like systems that are in place so that, for example, you were mentioning your inquiry form on your website and things like that. And I always preach for clear boundaries when you set up your business. Because I feel like, and it all goes back to cake business is the only business where we don't get paid. And I think the root of this is that cake makers, more often than not, are hobbyists, which then became professionals. And because there is no like groundwork of how to run a business in that particular industry, because it's basically an industry made of hobbyists, it feels like everything that is selling becomes, like you said, a bit informal at first, and then when it's time to, well, actually you are charging money to people, you need to not be informal and be organized and have systems in place. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, how do we do this? Having clear boundaries set up from as early on as possible is definitely, in my opinion, something that's going to set you up for success, at least protect the way you run your business. And like what you were saying earlier, you need to think how much you want to get paid, and you need to treat it as a business, because I think a lot of people will treat that as a hobby, and I was guilty of that at first. Until I was like, no, I'm going to do that properly now. But I don't know if it's the same, because you've been teaching so many people as well. Do you see that often, like people treating that as a hobby and not really, you know, like they want to start selling more seriously, but they don't really know where to start? And
I think most of people, like you say, they see it as a side business rather than, you know, a professional way to do it. And And maybe that's why they don't set any boundaries or have terms and conditions or all this stuff. And when they potential clients, it's all a little bit informal, and I like to say a little bit too familiar from first contact point. They go too familiar with this person, and they don't see how that can actually damage them, because then the people on the other side, they might feel entitled to do whatever, to ask for whatever, and get away with it. So I think boundaries are important. I think when that first contact, you have to put in writing what you're willing to do, or not everything, but the main general points, like, yeah, it's this, and people
And
know
you do
that.
that, don't you? On your website, it's very clear when people land on your website. Like, you have no fluff. You're
Yeah,
very new. You're like straight to the point. So this is what I do. This is how I do
yeah,
it. The minimum amount to require my services is X. Would
yeah.
you say that? Because I think a lot of people are scared to do that. But surely, if people like you do it, it is proof that it is working, and it's not going to put you out of business. Like, you
Yeah,
still have
no,
people that's
and
coming in.
because I see that a lot of people put like a like an average figure for a cake and stuff like that. And that they're all different. So one might cost more than the other one and all this stuff. But having like a ballpark figure low, I mean, I'm not saying I don't do under that, but it's a compromise. And I always say people, the clients, you can have a cheaper one, but it's going to be a lot smaller than what you want. And that's fine. But also, what, you mentioned the website, but a lot of people go straight for the inquiry form and then they don't read anything. They really, this age, they don't read anything.
Yeah.
And then, and you go like, well, you have to have an email prepare to do all that, like a formatted email, just to change the name of the person, and that's it. And that you can tell them this, and that's it. And then they will take it from there if they want to.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I sound like a broken record a bit in the society, because I speak about that quite a lot, because we've started doing like more like business related classes, and obviously I speak about my own experience and what's worked for me, and this is what I share. And I'm like, I created a brochure because I realized that things that I said on the website people didn't read. So I would send them an inquiry form with like a formatted email and like a very in-depth inquiry form where I ask everything, and they could upload photos and all of that. And I would also add my brochure to that email and tell them, you need to read that, because no, we can't work together, but please read that, basically making a point for them to understand. And so I'm just glad that it's not just me who find out actually people don't read. No, and they're still going to contact you and ask you how much does it cost to do a 3-tier cake with no information.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's like, 5 tiers and 3 tiers, and it is, there's no reference. They don't ask for reference. They don't send you references, or they don't even, sometimes they don't even tell you how many people it's for. And even though now some people is more used to people, to cake makers asking, and I think there's, they know they're going to be out, but there's still people that they refuse to say for how many people it is. Like, no, I want a 3-tier cake, and I say, well, but I can do a 3-tier cake for 20 people, or for for 500 people. So it's a minefield.
Yes. I like to think about it as, I don't know if you agree with that, but for me, the way I saw this as a cake maker, because obviously I don't sell cakes anymore, I'm like fully into the modern cake society and online classes, but when I would sell cakes, I would just assume that people had no idea what they needed to ask me, and they had no idea. They're like a blank slate, like a little child coming to you and asking you for a cake, so you need to be prepared to have the right questions at hand to give them straight away. And this is what you do as well with your inquiry form, isn't it? But you say that some people even bypass the inquiry form and just send you an email straight away. So there's always people falling through the cracks.
So some people just email, and they ask. They basically ask for availability and how much will it cost this. But I replied to them and I said, well, I need to know this before I can tell you how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
The inquiry form obviously is a little bit more detail and it gives you more an idea of colors and numbers because it does say how many people it's for. But it is like you said, in theory, and I always said to people when I meet clients in the few wedding fairs I do these days, in the last one, there was one couple that said, well, we don't know what we're doing. And I said, you shouldn't know. You know, in reality, I mean, when you see a big scheme of things, I mean, when people is getting married, it's the first time they're doing it.
Yeah.
And they don't know, you know, they go by what some people tell them and that, but it's always a new experience. And I said to them, well, you don't know, but I can help you with the cake and tell you what works and what doesn't, and we take it from there. But you shouldn't come and say and know everything, because I don't think it's possible, unless you've done it like a few times already, which, you know, you get those too.
Yeah.
But for the big majority, it's the first time, so it's always a new thing.
I love that. That's such a good way of saying it. Well, actually, you shouldn't know, and I'm here to guide you.
Yeah.
That's such a good insight to give people, because I've had a few people as well who didn't know, and these are my favorite actually, because it feels like I have carte blanche and I can just do what I want, and they're gonna be like, "Well, we trust you," and well, then you also have the bridezillas, or I don't know if there's a. I've never had groomzillas. It's always been the bridezillas, and who were like wanted to see samples of the gold that I was going to use on the cake and stuff. Luckily, it didn't happen too often, but there are definitely a few one-offs people who are like very specific on what they think that they know that they want. But
there are people.
And I think having that confidence as well, because you come out, Enrique, as very confident when you showcase your work and on your Instagram, and like you educate people, you explain this is why my cake costs money, because they are not just cakes, and like I've seen a few reels that you've done going in that sense. It does take, I think, a bit of confidence to be like, well, if you don't know what you want, that's great, because I am the professional and I'm going to guide you. And I think like for many cake designers, getting to that point is almost like the grail, because that's the point when usually, you know, you don't have to justify your prices anymore, because you have that confidence and you know that you can easily tell people what they should or shouldn't have, what works, what doesn't, and it's just like a whole approach of, you know, you've reached that point.
You can say no to some, and I think I always remember when I started and I was working, you know, not only the day, but sometimes it was late hours at night, and the moment that clicked was that I just managed to, you know, like kind of micromanage myself into, no, this is going to be from 9 to 6, not from 9 to 2 a.m. in the morning, because I didn't have time to do all the stuff. And you see that and you say, yeah, it's gone a long way from there, and you don't have to, but it takes time. It doesn't
it takes time.
happen. It doesn't happen overnight, and I think that's what people need to understand, that you have to keep doing it and trying and finding the balance, because obviously all situations are different as well. So, but balance is very important. I mean, like, you know, I don't want to be working till 2 a.m. in the morning or that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just. It doesn't happen overnight. I know I said before, but I've talked to some people and they think it's going to happen, you know, rather fast or quick, or, you know, it's going to be in a week. And you said no, and it's the same with classes. I mean, people go to classes and they think they're going to come out and they're going to be this new person. And I say, no, you have to go back and practice all this as many times as you can, for everything. And then maybe, you know, what you practice in 2 years' time, you'll get a client asking you for that.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it doesn't happen in a week or in 2 days or anything. And it's the same with everything, but you need to be constant. You need to be, working on it.
Amazing. Would you, because you're doing that full time, aren't you? The
Yeah.
company. Yeah. And would you say that it is safe for people if they have like obviously it's a silly question because you can't say yes or no. We don't know depending on people's situation, but a lot of people still have part-time jobs and do that on the side and they dream of doing that full-time. And for those people, like I never really know what to say because I want to tell them keep your part-time job because if it is a safety net, you know, until you get to that point where you can go full-time. But what's your point of view on that, if you have one?
If you're not completely sure and you're finding that transition quite, you don't see it, I'll say go with your gut and don't leave your part-time job.
Yeah.
I know people that have not even part-time jobs, they have a full-time job and they still find the time to make 2 or 3 cakes a week. And I admire it, to be fair, but I don't know how they do it.
No, me neither.
And basically it's because of what I was saying before. I mean, I don't want to be working at 2 a.m. in the morning, you know, because I think you burned yourself, you know, and it's supposed to be something that you enjoy. And if you're gonna be doing this like in a I don't know how to say like forced or you lose that enjoyment, and then there's no point because you're gonna hate it. But they do it, and I say if you have a part-time job, I mean it's something to do with that safety net, like you said. I'll say well until you feel you know that you can actually do that job. Some people do that. A lot of people do that. They keep doing the part-time job, and then they feel like. I'm at that point now that I can actually leave out of this, and they do it. But I don't think if you're charging £50 for a cake, you should do it because it's like I said, how many cakes you have to make in a week to do that. Well, you could be doing like maybe 1 or 2, charge them properly. It would be less stressful on your body, on your life, on everything, on your time, and then be successful as well. So, but it is, you know, baby steps. It's not like
baby steps, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what people need to remember is baby steps. And like you said about the classes, it's something that I've seen as well in when people, and also when I do classes of anything else that's not necessarily cake related, but people always want to nail it the first time, and they get disappointed and frustrated when they don't get the spatula exactly the right angle, and they look at you doing it and they're like, oh, but you make it look so easy. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been at it for like 10 years, so obviously.
Yeah. That's actually correct. You know, it's not.
Do you think that is because people are too impatient, or do you think it's because people just don't give themselves the grace of learning, of giving themselves the time to learn?
No, I think it's a combination of things. Last week I had a private student and I was talking to her because she was very interested on the working side of how to build her business. You know, we were doing some work here and she was like, this is so insightful for me because we laugh. And I said, yeah, because when you see social media, it's just like a minute. And a lot of people think that it's educational, but there's a lot of things left outside that is not the same like when you are with someone on the same place doing it. Because a 30-second reel, it shows you some stuff, but we need to leave a lot of things outside because otherwise it will be like 30 minutes. And she thought,
hours.
yeah. Huh?
30 hours.
Yeah.
To be specific.
It was like, it's just, and I think it's that expectation with social media, part of nowadays, especially with those reels and TikToks and all this stuff. And people, you can get ideas and glimpses. And sometimes I show things how to do it, but you still get questions. You still get like, how? And I think because people see that, they think it's quite easy, and then instead of finding their own way, they just think, oh, I'll see it again and I'll do it. And it doesn't work the first time. Yeah. It doesn't work the second time. And it's all about, you know, practicing and doing stuff and it's how our brains work now. And a lot of people, it's just attention span of 5 seconds and that's it.
Yes, we've been Instagrammable brains now,
Yeah.
basically, like short attention span and yeah, but this is fun. But yeah, well, Enrique, that was great. Thank you so much for all your insights. And again, you know, you are such an inspiration for a lot of people out there. I don't know if you know it. You probably do. I don't know. Be a
Yeah.
bit modest, but you are anyway. And right, well, thanks so much, Enrique. And
Thanks for having me.
my pleasure. We'll keep an eye on you on Instagram and
Well, I'll have to go to wherever you are, and you're gonna have to feed me croissants
yes,
and
well, we can, you
crockenboots
know,
and
find you some nice croissants if you come
I
to France.
know, I
You know, I
know.
am thinking of doing something like that, some sort of like cool retreat and have people come
Oh, that
over.
would be
And,
fantastic. Yeah,
yeah,
you
I should do
you
it,
should
shouldn't I?
do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I'm
should
not
do
very
that.
good at organizing things, so it's on the back of my mind
No,
for now.
but okay, you have to think like you invite not only, I mean, you have someone, you invite me or someone else, and you have like a week, and because it's maybe in the countryside, and you
Yeah,
organize activities, and I think people will love that.
yeah, they
Honestly,
would, wouldn't they? In a
yeah.
chateau. All right, well, thank you so much, Enrique. I will
Okay.
speak to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.